First contact gone wrong. The massive view screen aboard the United Earth Defense Station, Sentinel, crackled to life, revealing a sight that would forever change humanity's place in the cosmos. High Commander Sarah Chen stood motionless, her weathered features illuminated by the harsh glow of emergency lighting, as she studied the approaching vessels. They were beautiful in their alienness, crystalline structures that seemed to defy physics, trailing streams of purple energy as they decelerated into Earth's orbit. Analysis. Chen's voice remained steady, despite the gravity of the moment. This was humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization, and everything about it felt wrong. 17 vessels, Commander, Lieutenant Ramirez reported from his station. Energy signatures unlike anything we've ever seen. They're not even trying to mask their weapon systems. The message that followed came in perfect English, transmitted simultaneously to every communication device on Earth. The voice was artificially smooth, almost musical, but carried an unmistakable tone of condescension. People of Earth, I am Supreme Executor Vaxthal of the Vexari Empire. Your world has been chosen for integration into our glorious civilization. Resistance is unnecessary. Your technological inferiority makes it futile. Submit, and you shall be granted the privilege of serving the Empire. Chen's fingers tightened around the railing of her command station. Humanity had hoped their first contact would be peaceful, had prepared for decades with protocols and diplomatic initiatives. But this was different. Sir, Ramirez's voice cracked slightly. They're deploying smaller craft. Thousands of them. The Vexari didn't wait for Earth's response. Their smaller ships, each the size of a passenger jet, began entering the atmosphere at strategic points around the globe. Their message was clear: submit or be conquered. In the hours that followed, governments worldwide scrambled to respond. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session, but the Vexari's timeline didn't account for human diplomatic processes. Their ships targeted military installations first, using precise energy weapons to disable rather than destroy. It was a demonstration of power, meant to show humanity the futility of resistance. But they had miscalculated. In Washington, D.C., Beijing, Moscow, New Delhi, and capitals worldwide, leaders received a classified message from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Rossi, lead scientist at the International Quantum Research Facility in Geneva, had made a breakthrough. Her message was brief but changed everything. We can beat them, but we need time. Give me 3 months. Let them think they've won. Chen received the same message in her command center. She understood immediately what needed to be done. The next transmission to the Vexari fleet came directly from her station. Supreme Executor Vaxthal, she began, forcing humility into her voice. We acknowledge the superiority of the Vexari Empire. To avoid unnecessary loss of life, we request terms for our surrender. The response was immediate, filled with smug satisfaction. Wise choice, humans. Your species shows more intelligence than most in accepting the inevitable. As the terms were negotiated, Chen watched the Vexari ships settling into orbit with predatory grace. They believed they had found another easy conquest, another primitive species to add to their collection. They saw humanity's quick surrender as proof of weakness. They didn't notice the quantum communication signals bouncing between Earth's most advanced research facilities. They didn't detect the subtle reorganization of Earth's military assets or the rapid conversion of civilian industries. Most importantly, they didn't understand that humans had spent centuries preparing for this moment through science fiction, war games, and ceaseless technological innovation. In her private quarters that night, Chen reviewed Dr. Rossi's complete report. The quantum breakthrough wasn't just theoretical, it was a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had seen. But they needed time to scale it up, to prepare the trap that would make the Vexari regret their arrogance. 3 months. Chen whispered to herself, studying the holographic display of Vexari ships in orbit. We just need to endure for 3 months. The occupation began the next day. Vexari administrators arrived in major cities, setting up their governance structures with practiced efficiency. They were almost gentle in their subjugation, believing they were bringing civilization to a primitive world. Their biggest mistake was leaving most of human infrastructure intact, assuming it was too primitive to pose any threat. As Chen watched the Vexari flag being raised over the United Nations building in New York, she allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had been underestimated before, by their own kind, by nature itself. Each time, they had emerged stronger. The Vexari would learn, as others had before them, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons or technology. It was in their absolute refusal to accept defeat. The silent counterpunch. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Dr. Elena Rossi hadn't slept in 3 days. The holographic displays surrounding her workstation pulsed with quantum calculations that would have seemed like magic to scientists just a decade ago. But she wasn't working on theory anymore. She was building humanity's revenge. The quantum entanglement field is stable, she announced to her international team. Scientists from 20 nations worked in shifts around the clock, their previous rivalries forgotten in the face of alien occupation. Begin the targeting sequence test. In the corner of the lab, a small Vexari communication device, smuggled in at great risk, floated in a containment field. As the quantum field activated, the device's purple energy signature flickered and died. Dr. James Wong, formerly of MIT, allowed himself a rare smile. It works. Their quantum communication network is vulnerable to our interference pattern. Not just vulnerable, Elena corrected, her eyes never leaving the data streams. Once we scale this up, we can turn their own network against them. Every piece of Vexari technology relies on quantum-based systems. They've never encountered anyone who could manipulate quantum fields at this level. Above ground, the Vexari occupation continued. Their administrators had grown comfortable with their apparent victory, impressed by humanity's quick adaptation to their new role. Humans were learning their language, adopting their customs, showing all the signs of a species accepting their place in the galactic hierarchy. Supreme Executor Vaxthal himself had taken up residence in the former United Nations building, now renamed the Imperial Administrative Center. He was composing his report to the Empire's central authority when his aide interrupted with concerning news. Supreme Executor, we've detected unusual energy readings from several human population centers, the aide reported nervously. They appear to be attempting to replicate some of our basic technology. Vaxthal waved a crystalline appendage dismissively. Let them try. Their primitive understanding of quantum mechanics makes it impossible for them to achieve anything significant. These attempts will only serve to demonstrate their limitations. But the Vexari weren't watching closely enough. In abandoned subway tunnels, converted warehouse basements, and remote mountain facilities, humanity was preparing. The quantum interference technology was being miniaturized, mass-produced using repurposed consumer electronics factories. Every failed attempt taught them more about Vexari technology. Every setback pushed them to innovate further. High Commander Chen, now serving as the official human liaison to the Vexari administration, played her role perfectly. She appeared appropriately deferential in meetings, expressing gratitude for the Empire's guidance, while secretly coordinating humanity's resistance through quantum-encrypted channels that the Vexari couldn't detect. 2 months into the occupation, a Vexari patrol discovered one of the smaller research facilities in the Australian outback. The response was immediate and violent. The facility was destroyed from orbit, but by then, it didn't matter. The knowledge had already spread, the technology distributed across thousands of locations. They're getting suspicious, Chen reported during a secure quantum conference with world leaders and key scientists. We need to accelerate the timeline. Elena nodded, dark circles under her eyes testament to her relentless work. The network is almost ready. Every major population center has quantum interference generators hidden and waiting. The moment we activate them, the Vexari will lose control of their entire technological infrastructure. And their ships? President Santos of Brazil asked, her holographic image flickering slightly. Will be trapped by their own quantum fields, Alina confirmed. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's all built on the same fundamental principles. They never imagined anyone could weaponize quantum entanglement itself. Chen studied the global readiness reports, scrolling across her secure display. We'll need a distraction for the final preparations, something to keep them looking in the wrong direction. I have an idea, contributed Director Wu from China. We'll leak information about a primitive resistance movement. Let them think they've discovered our plans, but make those plans appear pathetically inadequate. The strategy was approved. Over the next 2 weeks, the Vexeri intercepted increasing chatter about human resistance groups armed with conventional weapons. They discovered caches of outdated military equipment, arrested low-level conspirators who broke under interrogation to reveal plans that posed no real threat. Vaxthal was pleased. This was exactly what he had expected. A primitive species making futile attempts at resistance using crude physical weapons. His reports to the Empire grew increasingly confident, describing Earth as a successfully pacified world. In her underground lab, Alina made the final adjustments to the quantum interference network. The technology had been refined far beyond their initial prototype, incorporating elements of Vexeri science that they had carefully studied during the occupation. What had started as a defensive measure had evolved into something that would reshape humanity's place in the galaxy. All stations report ready, Chen announced during the final secure briefing. Quantum generators are in place and synchronized. Strike teams are positioned near every major Vexeri installation. Alina took a deep breath, looking at the faces of colleagues who had worked impossible hours to reach this point. Remember, we'll only have a few minutes of total confusion when the network activates. Every team needs to execute their part of the plan perfectly. The countdown began. In hidden locations across the planet, humans waited beside quantum generators that would turn the Vexeri's technological superiority into their greatest weakness. They had endured 2 months of occupation, playing the part of the submissive species while preparing to demonstrate humanity's true capability. The time for pretending was almost over. Operation Checkmate. The attack began not with a bang, but with silence. At precisely 300 UTC, every Vexeri communication device on Earth simultaneously went dark. In orbit, their crystalline ships flickered as quantum fields collapsed and reformed in patterns their systems couldn't process. Supreme Executor Vaxthal was awakened by the chaos. His personal quantum interface, a device that had never failed in centuries of service, displayed only static. Through the windows of his penthouse suite, he watched as the purple energy signatures of Vexeri technology throughout New York City began to pulse erratically. Status report, he demanded, but his commands went nowhere. The quantum network that connected all Vexeri technology was experiencing something unprecedented, coordinated interference on a planetary scale. In the Geneva facility, Alina watched the cascade of quantum disruptions spreading across her monitors. Network stability at 97%, she announced. Their attempts to compensate are only making it worse. Every adjustment they make feeds back into our interference pattern. High Commander Chen's voice came through on the old-fashioned radio network humanity had secretly maintained. All teams, execute Phase 2. I repeat, execute Phase 2. Across the globe, strike teams emerged from hiding. They moved with precision toward Vexeri installations, their weapons simple projectile firearms. Technology the aliens had dismissed as primitive, but the Vexeri's advanced personal shields, dependent on quantum fields for power, were now useless. In orbit, the real masterpiece of humanity's plan unfolded. The quantum interference wasn't just disrupting Vexeri systems, it was reprogramming them. Their ships' neural networks, the most advanced artificial intelligence in known space, were being overwhelmed by patterns they couldn't comprehend. How does it feel? Chen's voice broadcast on all frequencies, using the Vexeri's own communication systems against them. To have your technology turned against you. to face an enemy you underestimated. Vaxthal watched in horror as his mighty fleet began to drift, their quantum drives corrupted by human interference. Reports flooded in from across the planet. Human forces were overwhelming Vexeri positions with shocking speed. Without their technological advantage, the administrators and security forces were discovering something terrifying about their supposedly primitive subjects. Humans were physically stronger, more numerous, and far more experienced in physical combat than their Vexeri counterparts. "This is impossible," Vaxthal muttered, watching through his window as human aircraft, simple machines powered by chemical reactions, took control of the skies. They're savages. They couldn't possibly understand quantum mechanics at this level. But understand it they did. In the 2 months of occupation, human scientists hadn't just studied Vexeri technology. They had improved upon it. The quantum interference network wasn't merely disrupting their systems. It was demonstrating humanity's ability to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe in ways the Vexeri had never imagined. Alina's team monitored the chaos from their facility, making real-time adjustments to counter every attempt by Vexeri engineers to regain control. "They're trying to reboot their quantum cores," she noted with professional admiration. "Clever, but we anticipated that." A new signal pattern emerged from her quantum generators, turning the Vexeri's desperate countermeasures into another weapon against them. Their ship's attempts to restore power only accelerated their system's collapse. In Washington, D.C., Beijing, Moscow, and other capitals, human forces secured Vexeri administrative centers with minimal resistance. The aliens' combat training had always relied heavily on their advanced technology. Without it, they were poorly prepared for the brutal efficiency of human military operations. Supreme Executor Chen's voice carried a hint of satisfaction as she personally led the team ascending the former UN building. "I believe it's time to discuss new terms." Vaxthal stood in his office, surrounded by dead tech, as human forces breached his security perimeter. The speed of humanity's reversal stunned him. In less than an hour, they had completely nullified every advantage the Vexeri Empire had held over them. "You don't understand what you've done," he warned as Chen entered his office. "The Empire will never allow this insult to stand. They will burn your world to ash." Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Look outside, Supreme Executor. Look at your fleet." She gestured to the window, where the once mighty Vexeri ships hung powerless in orbit, their crystalline structures dark and lifeless. "You're not in a position to make threats. But more importantly, you're not in a position to send warnings. We've isolated your quantum communication network." Elena's voice came through Chen's radio. "No distress signals reached the Empire. As far as they know, Earth is still a successfully occupied world. And that gives us time to prepare for their eventual discovery of the truth." Vaxthal sank into his chair, the full implications hitting him. Humanity hadn't just defeated the occupation force. They had done it so quickly and completely that no warning would reach the Empire. They would have time to fortify, to expand their quantum interference technology, to prepare for the larger conflict that would inevitably come. "Now," Chen said, taking the seat across from him, "let's discuss how you can help us minimize further bloodshed. Because make no mistake, Supreme Executor, humanity has no intention of remaining at the bottom of the galactic hierarchy." Outside, the sun rose over a changed Earth. In just one night, humanity had demonstrated that technological superiority meant nothing without the wisdom to use it properly. They had proven that determination, ingenuity, and the ability to adapt were more valuable than any advanced technology. The galaxy was about to learn a crucial lesson. Never underestimate a species that had spent its entire history overcoming impossibilities. The tables turn. 3 weeks after Earth's liberation, the quantum interference technology that had defeated the Vexeri began appearing on worlds across the galaxy, not through military conquest, but through a far more powerful medium: information. Dr. Elena Rossi stood before the hastily assembled Galactic Information Council, her hologram projected into hundreds of alien parliaments and assemblies. Behind her, streams of quantum equations told a story that made many species' scientific authorities tremble. The Vexari Empire built its dominance on technological superiority, she explained, her words automatically translated into thousands of languages. But they forgot a fundamental truth. Technology without innovation becomes stagnant. They stopped learning centuries ago, content with their position. Humanity never stops learning. On dozens of worlds, subjugated species watched in amazement as the quantum interference specks spread through their information networks. The Vexari's attempts to suppress the data only accelerated its distribution. Earth had turned their own quantum communication network into a delivery system for liberation. In his secured observation cell, former Supreme Executor Vaxthal watched the revolution he had inadvertently sparked. "You don't understand what you're doing," he warned High Commander Chen during her daily interrogation session. "The Empire maintains order. Without it, the galaxy will descend into chaos." Chen's response was measured but firm. "Order through subjugation isn't order at all. It's just delayed chaos. We're offering something different. Cooperation without domination." The effects of Earth's quantum revelation rippled through the galaxy. On Centauri Prime, the first world to successfully replicate the human quantum interference technology, the Vexari garrison found their ships powerless within hours. The local population, physically stronger and more numerous than their occupiers, quickly overwhelmed them. Similar scenes played out across Vexari-controlled space. Species that had lived under imperial rule for generations discovered that their supposed masters were vulnerable. More importantly, they discovered that humanity was willing to share not just technology, but knowledge. "We're receiving requests for assistance from 17 different worlds," Lieutenant Ramirez reported from his restored command station aboard the Sentinel. "Most of them have already successfully implemented basic quantum interference systems." Chen nodded, studying the galactic map that now showed spreading points of resistance. "Deploy our advisory teams as requested. Remember, we're not there to fight their battles. We're there to help them fight their own." The human advisory teams carried more than just technical knowledge. They brought centuries of human military and resistance experience, teaching subjugated species the art of asymmetric warfare, the power of united resistance, and the importance of innovation under pressure. In Geneva, Alina's international team had expanded to include scientists from a dozen alien species. The quantum interference technology was evolving rapidly as new perspectives and scientific traditions contributed to its development. The Arcturians have a fascinating approach to quantum field manipulation, Elena explained during a global briefing. "Combined with Rigelian energy distribution theories, we've improved the system's efficiency by 300%. The Vexari aren't just facing our technology now. They're facing the combined scientific knowledge of every species they've ever oppressed." The Empire's response was predictably brutal. They attempted to crush the spreading rebellion with overwhelming force, but their military strength relied on the very technology that was now being turned against them. Each failed suppression attempt only served to demonstrate their vulnerability. "Your empire made a crucial mistake," Chen explained to Vaxthal as they watched another imperial fleet go dark above a rebellious world. "You thought technological superiority made you invincible, but technology is just a tool. What matters is how you use it, how you adapt when it fails, and most importantly, who you share it with." The Vexari Central Command, facing unprecedented defeats across their territory, finally began to understand the full scope of their miscalculation. Their invasion of Earth hadn't just failed, it had triggered a fundamental shift in galactic power dynamics. Humanity emerged as something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that wielded advanced technology not for domination, but for liberation. Their willingness to share knowledge, to teach rather than subjugate, earned them allies across the galaxy. "We're receiving a transmission from the Vexari High Council," Ramirez announced one morning. "They're requesting negotiations." Chen allowed herself a small smile. Tell them we'll be happy to discuss terms. But first, they need to understand something fundamental about humanity. She walked to the observation window of the Sentinel, looking out at Earth below. Human ships, now incorporating elements of upgraded Vexari technology, patrolled alongside vessels from a dozen allied species. We don't want their empire, she continued. We don't want to rule or dominate. What we want is something they never understood. A galaxy where species help each other grow, where technology serves everyone, not just the powerful. The revolution that started with Earth's resistance was becoming something larger, a transformation in how species across the galaxy viewed power, technology, and cooperation. The Vexari Empire had spent centuries building walls between species. Humanity's greatest victory wasn't in tearing those walls down, but in teaching others how to do it themselves. As negotiation terms were prepared, Chen received reports of another dozen worlds successfully implementing quantum interference systems. But more importantly, she received reports of species beginning to work together, sharing knowledge and resources in ways the Empire had always prevented. The galaxy was changing, and at its heart was a truth the Vexari had never grasped. True power doesn't come from controlling others, but from helping them realize their own potential. A new dawn. 1 year after Earth's liberation, representatives from over 300 species gathered in the restored United Nations building. The crystalline architecture of the Vexari occupation had been replaced with a striking fusion of human and alien design, symbolizing the new era of galactic cooperation. High Commander Chen stood at the podium, facing an audience that would have been impossible to imagine just a year ago. Former Vexari administrators sat alongside the species they had once subjugated. Scientists from dozens of worlds collaborated openly, sharing discoveries that had been restricted under imperial rule. We gather here not to celebrate victory, Chen began, her words echoing through the chamber, but to ensure it never happens again. No species should dominate another. No civilization should hoard knowledge that could benefit all. In the front row, Dr. Elena Rossi sat beside her counterparts from across the galaxy. The quantum interference technology that had started as Earth's defense had evolved into something far more profound, a foundation for new forms of faster-than-light travel, instant communication, and energy generation that benefited all species. The galactic coalition we established today, Chen continued, will be different from the empire it replaces. No species will rule. All will contribute. All will benefit. Former Supreme Executor Vaxthal, now serving as a liaison between the reformed Vexari government and the coalition, watched with a mixture of resignation and dawning understanding. The humans had done something his people had never considered possible. They had united the galaxy not through force, but through shared knowledge and mutual respect. What we learned from Earth, Vaxthal addressed the assembly when it was his turn to speak, wasn't just about technology. It was about perspective. For centuries, we saw advancement as a zero-sum game. If others grew stronger, we thought we grew weaker. We were wrong. The evidence of this new approach was visible in the transformed galaxy. Worlds that had been resource extraction colonies under the Empire were now thriving centers of innovation. Species that had been deliberately kept technologically primitive were making breakthroughs in science and engineering, contributing unique perspectives that accelerated progress for all. The quantum network that once controlled now connects, Elena explained to a group of young scientists from various species. But more importantly, it teaches us that everything in the universe is connected. No species can truly advance by holding others back. The changes weren't without challenges. Centuries of imperial rule had left deep scars, and not all Vexari accepted their new role as equals rather than rulers. But humanity's approach to these challenges demonstrated another lesson to the galaxy: the importance of mercy alongside strength. We could have destroyed the Vexari, Chen reminded the assembly. We could have used their own technology to dismantle their civilization. Instead, we offered them a chance to join us as equals. Because true strength isn't in destroying your enemies, but in turning them into allies. The Galactic Coalition established that day laid out principles that would reshape civilization across the stars. Knowledge would be shared freely. Technology would serve all species. Conflicts would be resolved through discussion and mutual understanding rather than force. As the ceremony concluded, Shen found herself in the building's rooftop garden, looking out over a New York City that now hosted beings from across the galaxy. Lieutenant Ramirez joined her, carrying data from the latest surveys. Another 30 systems have applied to join the coalition, he reported, and the Joint Scientific Commission has approved funding for 300 new research projects combining knowledge from different species. Chen nodded, watching an alien transport vessel glide silently overhead, its design a beautiful merger of multiple civilizations' technologies. "You know what amazes me most," she said, "not how quickly we defeated the Empire, but how quickly everyone adapted to working together once given the chance." In Geneva, Alina's quantum research facility had become the first of many galactic innovation centers, where scientists from all species collaborated freely. The breakthroughs emerging from these centers were transforming life across the galaxy, solving problems that had plagued civilizations for millennia. "Perhaps that's humanity's real gift to the galaxy," Alina mused during a lecture to a multi-species audience. "Not the quantum interference technology, but the reminder that progress comes from collaboration, not competition. From sharing knowledge, not hoarding it." As the sun set on that historic day, ships from hundreds of worlds filled Earth's orbit, their designs as varied as the species that created them. They were no longer divided into rulers and subjects, advanced and primitive. They were partners in the greatest adventure any of them had ever undertaken, discovering what they could achieve together. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The species that had seemed primitive, that had been dismissed as simple savages, had shown them a better way. Humanity's greatest victory wasn't in defeating an empire, but in proving that true civilization isn't measured by technological superiority or military might, but by the willingness to help others rise alongside you. And in the vast darkness of space, countless worlds looked to Earth, not as conquerors or liberators, but as teachers, showing them that the future belongs not to those who dominate, but to those who cooperate, innovate, and never stop learning. The day humanity snapped had become the day the galaxy woke up.